morning and welcome to Accessibility, Investigation into Improvement of Website Accessibility for Visual Impaired and Blind Persons at universities of Sudanese universities. And in this presentation, I'm going to talk about accessibility and also to the definitions of what is accessibility, and also what's the problem encountered by blind and visual impaired people when they accessing website, and also what I have been found when I testing the website by using visual impaired and blind, and also the methodology I have used on this presentation and this paper, and also what the conclusions at the end of the presentation. I left this slide just for networking and for sharing. If you want to be in contact, that's my name. So I work in Warwick Hospital. I work in Warwick Hospital, and also I live in Birmingham, and that's my telephone number and my email for contact. So the definitions of accessibility, according to Thatcher, accessibility in terms of making website do not exclude people with disability. So that means access for all. All these researchers, they identify that when blind and visual impaired person using a website, that means must be access for all. There is no discrimination at all. So, and also Manner define accessibility as a measure of user ability to interact with a website. So that means when the user interact with a website, this must be accessible. Okay? And also, Smith says accessibility is about design for anyone. So that means when you design a website, it should be designed for anyone, not exclude any particular people or person or any disability or non-disability. And also, while define accessibility to the contents of degree which a website is usable by people with a disability. So that means the website must be usable for people with disability, okay? We have accessibility tools, or what software and hardware we use in order to enable visual impaired and blind person using a web. So we've got assistive technology. So it's a software or hardware that has been specifically designed to assist people with disability. It's carrying out daily activity. So that, I mean, it could be hardware or software enable disabled person to use the computer in daily basis. We've got screen reader. Screen reader is software application that enable people with several visual impaireds to use a computer. Examples, we've got examples. HAL system, which is it's called Supernova, is a part of HAL system. And also we've got Josh, which is job access with speech. That means all this is screen and Windows Eyes. Windows Eyes for videos enables visual impaired to use videos. They can BIOS, they can use Control-Alt, and they can use Shift F1s to help those people with using this software. And also, we've got Josh. You can see Josh is a screen reader, which enable to read the screens for blind and visual impaired people without having difficulty in order to see. So they cannot see the screen, but they can listen to the screen reader, which the screen reader read the contents of the web, of the screen. So they're reading the screen. Also, we've got voice browsers. Voice browsers such as Home Page Reader reads web contents in order in which tag appear in HTML files. This is here to read whatever the tags, for example, in image or in picture or in forms, in order to read it for blind or visual impaired people, in order to tell them, for example, this is a picture of Atif. Okay, so that means they tell them when it target into HTML. Most websites nowadays not accessible for blind or visual impaired people using this kind of technology software because they miss out the tag. When the HTML read on the screen, they miss the tag. There is no tag to tell them this is a picture, for example. And then they miss out. Okay, and which is integrated, this is software integrated into the browser. The last one, which is screen magnifications, this is for partially impaired, not visually impaired. Partially means elder peoples over 70s, they have difficulty to see the text, so the screen magnification is a software program that magnify a portion of the screen so that can more easily view the text. So that means we can zoom the text in order to see it for partially impaired and elderly peoples. Visually impaired, partially impaired, and elderly people, they share the same challenge when they view in a website. So they share the same knowledge, the same challenge when they viewing or accessing a website. The problems we have when we accessing internet by blind, visually impaired is there are some effort focused on making a web browser easy for all people, but the screen reader or alternative keyboard or mouse device are still not helpful for blind person. Because most of blind people, they're using a keyboard instead of using a mouse. And also, sometimes with a mouse, you need to click. They ask you to click here, for example, to drop down a menu and so on. We'll talk about this later on. But you will see this is a problem finding. And also, blind people cannot control the mouse movement effectively as a result of this. And also, user interface is proposed. So that means we need to interact with the screens, enable visually impaired and blind people to use the website. And also, web accessibility and usability groups find out some of the screen reader, example Josh, which is job access with speech, and Windows eyes are difficult and complex, very complex, and also expensive for people with visual impaired. A screen reader can read the text on the website but cannot read the picture. This is the big challenge for visual impaired when the screen reader read the picture and there is no tag for the picture or capture to tell them this is a picture, for example. Okay? Or animations as well, animation and flash, which is screen reader cannot read animation or flash. And also the time it takes to find main contents for the page. So imagine when you see in the websites, so the screen read the whole website. So some navigator at the top and some contents, we'll talk about this later in the problem when we're testing this website, but you will see, you will identify that the top navigator is a problem for a screen reader to read the whole. So sometimes the blind or visually impaired, they don't know which home page they are, which page, and so on. So which is, it takes a long time to find the main contents of the page. And also the voice browser, such as Home Reader, read the contents of the web are in HTML, are usually banner or index and forms top of the page, and also causing problems for blind and visually impaired. Sometimes they have to listen to all these, the navigator top and also the contents at the top of the page. Also, because of the web layout designed for name recognition, user visual screening, similar issues of interface by visually impaired users trying to specific information on the page. So that may take a long time to find what they're looking for. So that means this is where the discrimination. So non-disabled, they can find the information easily, but people with disability, they take time, even with the software they use in order to find what they're looking for. Sometimes they are annoyed and they give up, which is really a big problem for visually impaired. Moreover, designers and developers, this is where we're going to tackle people design the website and the developer in order to train them to make sure they forget, they try to forget the equivalent software or alternative for visually impaired, which is a problem for making for non-visually web more difficult. Okay, so sometimes they not follow the tools. I will explain it in a bit. And also they not try to make the website accessible for all. The lack of description capture of image. So this is the huge problem for visual impaired when there is no tags or capture screen to describe what image or what into the website. So also problems we have when blind visual impaired people using screen reader flashing, and also links or navigator bar at the top, use of mouse. So this is huge, difficult for visual impaired and blind using a mouse, and also size and font size. This is for partially or LD peoples, and also drop-down menu to make selection. For example, they ask you to click and drop down to select. And also arrow downs combo box. This is when we interview them, we find out this is the most problem they have, which is flash animation when they move in through the screens, and also the link navigator using a mouse, drop downs, and the logo at the top of the page. We'll talk about it in how to make this logo. So the flash, the screen reader cannot read the flash or animation, so this is a problem. And also the link navigator at the top of the page, some of the, when it's linked or linked to different page, so it's a problem for screen reader to read it. And sometimes when they ask you to use a mouse, like click here, for example, in order to take you somewhere in a web, and also a size of the font, and drop-down menu, which is a problem for visual impaired in order to make a selections when they ask them to drop down. For example, when they're filling online a form. And also, the logo at the top is not containing the tag on the logo. They add the logo, but sometimes it's linked to homepage, for example. Even if it's linked to homepage, it will be described as a homepage, but they leave the logo as a picture at the top of the website, but with no descriptions, no tags on the logo. You see here clearly, it's showing in here people using screen reader, and also people using screen magnifier users and group controlling with no disability. You can see clearly here that the success rate at 12.5 when we're using screen reader, and also 21.5% when we use magnifier, or user when they use magnifier. With people with non-disability is 78.2%, okay, according to Nielsen. And also the time on task, so by minute and second. So disabled or visual impaired people, when they use a screen reader, it takes a long time. Okay, even they can finish the task, but it takes more time than non-visual or non-disability, and also people using a screen magnifier. And also you can see the error, so that the number of error caused by a screen reader using by visual impaired person is lower than, is higher than the one using by non-disability. So it's 0.6, but the error by visual impaired, even when they use a screen reader, is 2.0, but screen magnifier is higher, here is 4.5. Successful rate from 1 to 7 scales, you will see blind visual impaired 2.5, but you will see non-disability 4.6. So from 1 to 7. So this is the matrix used by Nielsen's when they use in screen reader and magnifier. So we use, in order to test the website, accessible or not accessible, we're using tools. And there is a guidelines approach to testing. There are a number of means of test accessibility, including tools, accessibility tools. This is just to assess and evaluate the web in order to make accessible or non-accessible. W3 accessibility test, which is, this is to validate HTML files on the website when you're inserting the address into these validations. W3, which is World Wide Web Consumer Accessibility Test, to test the website whether it's accessible or not. Okay. And also web content accessibility guideline. This is the most important guidelines. If the designer, the web developer and designer follow these guides, they have 16 guides, but I'm afraid most of developers, they develop the website, but they not follow these web contents accessibility guidelines. But they must follow this, and also wave test. This is just to evaluate and to test the website whether they have error about if they're missing a tag or if there is no alt on the image. They will tell them the error with the color as a green. They pass and red and yellow as a warning and also as error. It doesn't matter how much accessible the website or how much error. If you got one error on your website, that means inaccessible. Accessibility check, which we get in accessibility check, the most important one, which is checked by web testing. To test the web and also automate check by and human check. Important is to test the website to involve the user, which is the main user, as a visual impaired and blind person to test your website before you publish it. So to involve or to interact with the people with visual impaired to test your website. So this is as a human check, and also as a website test, it is important to involve them in implementation life circle. Before you implement your website, you design it. In design times, you involve user with accessibility, and also in the testing times, you involve people with visually impaired, and also as a human check, which to correct error, for example, like click here, or drop down a box, for example, for visual impaired and blind person. Web accessibility evaluation. So after we test the website using these tools in order to enable, so we find out when form missing or labels empty, that's the problems, and also broken skip navigator. Sometimes they ask you to press F1 or press a key to skip the navigator at the top, so this is missing as well, or broken. And also a link text, like click here, it's a problem. Image map or input or a map area missing, alt text. Remember earlier we mentioned about HTML file should contain alt text to explain or to describe the image. And also frame missing title. Sometimes they have a frame at the top when they design a web, but they miss the title, so that is problems. And also linked image alt or text, and linked image with a space. Sometimes they leave a space. Empty heading. Sometimes we have a heading but empty heading or incorrect ordered headings. So this is also we find out when we test. We're using these tools to the methodology I have used. This study involved review a test of number of computer software assistive technology used by visual impaired peoples for accessibility, and also number of blinds and visual impaired person have been interviewed to explore their experience when they view in websites, and also include students from University of Khartoum, University of Science and Technology, Sudan Science and Technology, and also Nilan University. We did test those three universities. They have e-learning, but the problem is the website is not accessible for the blind and visually impaired people to use it. So that means they're not involved or they're not using the e-learning, so because the website is not accessible. The number of websites have been examined for accessibility error using W3C and also wave evaluation tools. Finding, this study found blind or visually impaired person access. Some error has been addressed with WCA, which is Web Contents Accessibility Guidelines. They should be implemented by developer, and also the guidelines are not applied by many website designers. This is the big problems. They design the website, but they not follow the guidelines by the web accessibility guidelines. And also the result of the test have been revealed that most of frequent website accessibility error, including missing alts, form labels, and also the link image at the text, which is mentioned. I mentioned it earlier. So one of the problems has been listing during the interview, including the flashing animation. This is when we interview them. They're talking about flashing animation on website, and also use the mouse to follow drop-down menu when we interview the people, and also the logo, sometimes casing for visual impaired. And also through the interview, we found out that a screen reader has take long to read the contents of the website. And this is sometimes get frustration from blind person or visual impaired, and they give up. And also, most intensive technology currently used are very expensive. So when we're talking about personally, if blind or visual impaired trying to buy a software, it's very expensive, like Josh or Supernova, in order to enable them. And also, so here we try to look at accessibility and non-stability. We test a lot of websites to find out. So you will see clearly the accessible, non-accessible website or inaccessible. The majority of websites not accessible for blinds. Accessible only 10%. This is we test wide range of websites in Sudan and in the world. So that means we find out only 10% from the website accessible. And also here, this slide to mention if the website just containing a statement about accessibility. 16% of the website just containing the accessibility statement about just basic accessibility, about the text, or about how to zoom, or how to make the text bigger, or just talk a little bit about accessibility. Conclusions, there are a number of assistive technology are currently used by blind visual impaired people, and those are going to help the group of the peoples using internet. Therefore, the problem which related to websites has been addressed, and also accessibility error could be avoided if the designer follow the guidelines. Okay, or using Disability Discrimination Act, or SENDA, Special Education Need Disability Act. And also, it has been proposed that website browser supply should have a link website to evaluate and validation the tools of the browser automatically if you have your website before you upload it into World Wide Web. So that means we can test your website and check if there is any error, and you can amend or modify the error before you uploading into World Wide Web. And also it proposed that touch screen technology should be provided for blind or visual instead of mouse, and also tag hand should be used by visual impaired and blind person instead of using a mouse or keyboard.